basically identity and the idea of identity in two parts.
Aden, lift the mic up. Thanks, Mum.
Yes, Helen. Helen sighs. Her breath leaves ghosts along the window. She inhaled deeply from a long, thin cigarette and took a sip of her coffee. It scalded her throat. She breathed again. The sickly sweet smell of bad coffee and cigarettes filled her nostrils as the air from her lungs bounced off the pane. She had been up on rooftops across the city contemplating jazz. Gaudy, tacky, floral printed, length edited and revised, hemmed in she was to sit just above the knee. Sporadically cigarette scarred, signs of abuse added identity. Trend to trend, like note to note they glide. She sits half-pinned on a semitone, not sure where to go. Another drag, the smoke drifted, curled and curled in tongues in the air, licked the yellowed ceiling, brushed her yellowed fingers. It escaped through a crack in the glass to the outside world. Helen sighs again, a dulcet tone behind the window. A humming crowd she knows is actually loud. A breath drawn to deeply, she coughs aloud. Her voice disappeared in the air, the half-dead fluorescence buzzed lordly over her. Dark-eyed, she let her gaze drift to members of the crowd below. The drunken masses, the conceited and over-opinionated adolescents, the over-educated and the hot shots, shot hot through with the heat of conformity, burning what they touched, taking everything that was sacred, and little is. Carefully constructed realities emerged thread by glorious thread, felt, flannelette, fleece, flocking, and the clothes resembled a macabre uniform, and the subjects flocked with militant intensity to wherever they were ordered to go. Helen screamed, unsure if it was the drugs or the crowds below. She let back a foot from the window before reclaiming her place in the sill. There must be a break from this conformity, and there was, every now and then, a Cassidy, a Ginsberg, a Pinsky, a Kerouac, a Strummer, a Cobain, a somebody not an everybody, and still Helen searched. The red bricks of her apartment building, churned in mills by Scottish workers, wearing forced tartan clad, breathing heavy fumes as Helen, gasping smoke. Red brick dust flooded the air and settled on rough hands, crawled under fingernails. Calluses adorned their palms as holes now spotted Helen's future. She had no idea who she was. That old building, red brick turned black, a street that stretched to the smog skyline and back. We built here row on row on row on row on row. Helen pressed her cheek to the glass, the colour of rows of roses, tenement row houses, project high-rises. I can't look at you right now. Mutters the ghostly reflections. She was barely there at all. This is part 2, Mark. Somewhere in lower Manhattan, a man raised his son to respect authority. He dwelled in corridors and passages in between buildings, grew accustomed to overcast mornings, fair-skinned, fair-eyed. Every day at school, skyline smog reminded him of his hard-working father, reminded him of his country, reminded him of his place. Dad churned bricks. Dad built cars. Dad worked hard. Dad passed on. Mark passed with average grades through high school, but flying colours in How to Fit Capitalism 101. Marcuse may mutter maliciously, Mark won't hear, his iPod's too loud. Dad was the cars he built, Shelby, Ford. Nissan and the foreign invasion left him jobless. TV dinners in front of the telly, Mark absorbed himself in consumer logic. This town was affluent in shiny distractions, but impoverished in things that money can't buy. And it would call from an overpass, or a dirty street corner, or from underneath a park bench, and other voices, and other rooms. Stay-in ceilings grew familiar, and Helen came to know him. She knew the way he lay, the way his spine curved yin-yangs against the white mattress, the white sheet smelled of office, and every day he'd don a new shirt, each stitch carefully fitted to hold in pace. This black panel, this sleeve, and this collar that had their place, knew their place. Their placement was ideal to create the comforting fit. If you look closely, you'll notice the new age polymer allowing both durability and breathability. If you look closer, you'll notice the shattered frame that they hold. Stirring troubled every other night, he'd bolt upwards and hurl his harsh voice at the opposite wall. He knew that there was something wrong with this routine. The cross-city commute, the long cubicle hours, the one window which showed tiny dust particles suspended mid-air falling towards the stock, grey carpet that seemed to stretch around every corner and every floor. The row upon row upon row of desks and other keyboards tacking out their insignificant facts, and dollar bills and meaningless bullshit around the water cooler. He had never gotten too into politics the way he was meant to. Occasionally he would run his hand over the raw, red bricks in his new apartment. Each finger made its own path across the rough wrecked stone, and this one fitted here by worn hands. Did they talk politics? Did they sip tea and drink coffee on their lunch breaks? They laughed at jokes that made them forget their place as another brick, mortared onto another foundation that had once been so solid and bold and different, and one by one bricks grew old and indifferent and accepted their place. Midnight spins in darkened corridors and hazed expressions on near crumbled landings. Foundations of units, apartments rotted through. Mark watched the crazed stagger city streets, lost in their own madness as he was lost in the madness of this bureaucracy, and wandered milky-eyed, bloodshot, off terrace, down park, and into night's breath, casting sprouted shapes against windows, walls, towering over them so many metres away. Footsteps echoed louder and louder, their own echelons on a broken chord, superciliously still airs cast from thousands of glazed eyes towering skyward around them, lost, drunk, ludicrous, joyous and brilliant nothing. He learned himself by the age of 16 that just as girls guarded their virginity, boys guarded something less tangible that they called themselves. And bards and guards and armoured cars. Skepticism would occasionally twitch at the corners of his mouth, pinching into a conceited smile before he'd crash to the ground and laugh at the bourgeois and pick himself up and pressing his cheek to the window. Mark sighs. Cold glass makes white scars on rosy cheeks. He swallows his pride. It scalds his throat.
Wow.